Well, so each week we're having a skit around one of the 7 last words of Jesus. And even though we haven't had it yet, I'm going to kind of give a little preview. The word for today is when Jesus said, "Today you will be with me in paradise." And if you're not familiar with the 7 last words, if you look at all 4 of the Gospels, while Jesus was on the cross, he says different things in different Gospels, but together there are 7. And 7 being traditionally a number that's associated with perfection, with God. This series of 7 last words has been used as a meditation. There's music written around it. A lot of times during Lent, they'll have series of the 7 last words. So each week we're having a skit this year around one of the 7 last words. And when Jesus said, "Today you will be with me in paradise," he was talking to a thief on the cross. I don't know if you know the story, but Jesus was crucified between 2 thieves. And it says one of them mocked him, but the other one said, "We're only getting what we deserve. You shouldn't mock him. He's innocent and we're guilty." And then upon hearing this, Jesus said, "Today you will be with me in paradise." Now the phrase that came to mind when I thought about that word was "as is," which is why some as-is properties available for purchase are up here. You know, when something has as-is on it, you know you're in trouble. You better have some skills to fix up whatever it is, because you're getting it, and it isn't very good. We know that. And not only is it not very good, but the seller isn't trying to make it look good. It's basically saying, this is a piece of junk, have fun. If you want it, go ahead and take it. And I thought of that in connection with the thief, because if you've ever heard anything about crucifixion, I mean, just what being nailed to a cross and left to hang there for hours. The Romans used crucifixion only some of the time because it was the worst possible way that they could think of to die. It was the most humiliating, painful, terrible thing they could figure out to do to someone. So for this thief, and thief might not be quite a complete explanation of what he did, to be hanging there and say, I'm only getting what I deserve. He obviously didn't think much of himself. He obviously knew that he was a pretty terrible person. Because to say, I deserve this, he was a bad guy. There's no getting around, or at least he thought he was a bad guy. And facing that, Jesus looks at him and says, "Today, you will be with me in paradise. Not tomorrow, not once you've been fixed up, not after things turn around in your life. Today." Yeah, we have that little clip. I don't know if you can read it, but 2 guys saying, "I never expected to see you here," with their little halos on. Today, and then the other one, express lane, 10 sins or less. Jesus is saying that's not what's going on here. This terrible guy, he gets to go today. So that should give you some hope wherever you are. That through Jesus, you can come today. But this thing that Jesus says, "Today you will be with me in paradise," naturally, I think, leads to the question, what is that going to be like? We all have our ideas about paradise. I like this quote. This is actually from a singer. A little quote says, "Paradise is exactly like where you are right now, only much, much better." And that's kind of all we have to work with in a way, is our own vision, of what we can imagine. And so when we talk about paradise, we often think of whatever we like the best. A lot of people talk about family, homes, family, riding. Did you say riding a tractor? Okay, riding a tractor. We all have our different things. I remember, and I may have shared this before, I met a woman who was in the final stages of Alzheimer's, and her granddaughter was actually an Alzheimer's nurse. And so she was able to take care of her grandma, even though she was very, very disabled. And the granddaughter called me and she said, "Grandma's close to her time. You should come down." So I went to visit and I said, "How did you know that she was close?" And she said, "Well, she woke up this morning and she told me that she'd been making a big supper for the farm hands out on the farm. Back when she was a young mother, she had she was a farm wife, and she would make these big meals for 20 or 30 guys when they came in from bringing in the crops. And I said, well, and she said, well, she said, all the patients I've had, when they get close to the end, they go back to the happiest time in their life. It's like, oh. And what immediately popped in my head was, in my life, this one was about 90, cooking for 30 hungry men in a farm kitchen around 1935 would not ever be the happiest time in my life. But for her, that was the point where she found so much meaning. And so that was where she went. But the thing about paradise is that it's beyond what we can imagine. God isn't as good as the best we can come up with. God is better. And so our images, we have to be careful with. This is an image, I've been wanting to use this for weeks since I found it. We have our traditional Jesus guy, but the guy on the right is a reconstruction based on skeletons that were found in a cemetery from the time of Jesus. And they took the actual faces of the people, and reconstructed kind of a composite of what somebody living in Jesus' time would have looked like. This is not what we picture, but it's much closer to the real than our traditional image. And with heaven, with paradise, what we imagine is very different from what we see. It has to be, because it's all going to be beyond what we can understand. And so all the images and metaphors don't explain exactly what's going on. But even understanding that we can't really get at the reality with what we have to work with. There's something important to say about paradise, about heaven, that we kind of miss in this passage, I think, when we talk about it. So Jesus said, today you will be with me in paradise. And shortly after that, on the cross, Jesus died. That day, the thief was with him in paradise. What happened after Jesus died? On the third day, he rose again. Jesus died and went into the thief. It says, you will be with me in paradise. Jesus died. He went to paradise. Did he stay there? According to it says he rose again. And all of the scriptures say very, very clearly, they want to make sure you know that Jesus was restored to life. And that he had a body, and if it wasn't a spirit, it wasn't a vision, it was Jesus walking around. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. In the Gospels, several times they mention how Jesus ate. Jesus shows up, he sees his disciples, and the first thing he says is, give me some food. He's not saying that because he's hungry, he's saying that because ghosts don't eat. Visions and spirit don't eat. So that's in there, and it's recorded in the Bible to make the point, this was a physical person with a body. Now he vanished, he reappeared, his friends didn't recognize him. It wasn't a normal body like we have, but it wasn't just a spirit. And so when we think of paradise or heaven, and we say, well, the body stays behind and the soul goes up to heaven and lives forever, that is not what the Bible describes. That is not what our ultimate fate is supposed to be. And if you think about it, if you look around at different cultures and different societies and different places, most religions or most ways of thinking get the idea